Here's another representation of where we will have STAR clinicians and STAR certification programs, all the stars. So you can see that we're really going to cover West Michigan. Cancer has touched many of our lives. I'm sure everyone either knows someone with cancer, has a family member with cancer, or maybe has even survived cancer themselves. More than 1 million people will be diagnosed with cancer in the U.S. this year. And many more people are surviving cancer and therefore living with the physical and mental impairments that come with the treatments. My friend Rob Atteberry, who I've asked to come speak today, has been my inspiration this past year to make sure that we have a program like STAR at Spectrum Health. He's why I've worked so passionately and hard on it, and I've asked him to come here and tell his story. Rob?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rob Atteberry. Mark, how's it going? There's Mark DeVries back there. He's a two-time cancer survivor, too. My name's Rob Atteberry. In my audience is Carrie, my wife, is my father, Max, my mother, Diane, and my sister, Cindy, along with some close friends from Meyer, Leanne, Cher, and David. And I apologize for reading off the paper today, but one of the side effects of my radiation is short-term memory, and I have difficulty remembering things. So I'm going to read, but I'm going to try to look up to you and talk to you. Mark, what's going on? And hopefully I'll make this as light as possible on a subject that's pretty intense. Well, I'm here today to talk about cancer, how it's changed my life, and how it will affect my life going forward. I used to be a different person. I used to live in Grand Rapids. I worked as vice president of merchandising at Meyer. I completed triathlons with Mark. And I supported my family, including my 4 young, awesome boys, Max, Wes, Ben, and Zach. After 8 years, I parted ways with Meyer, and I took a job in Detroit as a VP of New Business Development with the Arden Companies. This is a good move. The president was my old boss from when I worked at Kmart, and I got my family back to Detroit where my wife and I met, and all of our family was. In fact, it was a great move, especially with what happened next. I was working for Arden, and my family was in the process of moving back to Detroit, Clarkston to be exact, and I was about to turn 40. Well, I turned 40 on April 28, 2012, and I had a fantastic party with all my closest friends and family, including Shannon and her husband. David was there. It was a wonderful, wonderful party. Absolute perfection. Dinner, dancing, drinking until 3 a.m. At the time, I didn't know it, but it would be the last fun night I would spend carefree and cancer-free. 5 days later, 5 days after my birthday, I got the results of a CAT scan that had been taken on my sinuses as a precaution for what I thought was a persistent sinus infection or allergies. For the previous year, I had been plagued with stuffy nose that seemed to get worse every time I laid in bed. And the CAT scan showed a tumor in my sinus, and my world was instantly changed. What followed was a biopsy. The doctor removed the entire tumor to be safe, and the biopsy showed it was a diffuse B-cell non-Hodgkin lymphoma, stage 1A. Well, it was pretty good. I beat it. I got there pretty quick. And after a battery test, it was concluded that the lymphoma was only in my nose, and I went through chemo and radiation. Worked the entire time, wound up in the hospital because I was neutropenic and had pneumonia. Also, at that same time, I actually lost my job. Needless to say, it was a rough few months. 6 months later, after all the tests were repeated and I had good results, I was considered in remission. My oncologist hugged me. He was a great guy. Congratulated me, and I spent 5 minutes talking to me about the word I had never used before, which was survivorship. He made a follow-up appointment with me. And by the way, that was the first time I had heard survivorship. Was that last time I met with Dr. Howard. And it was good. It was very encouraging. He made a follow-up appointment with me in 3 months and sent me on my way. I felt such happiness because I was in remission. I was, but I was completely confused as well. What is survivorship? That was my one question. Where do I go from here? How do I find a job? Why did this happen to me in the first place? Why am I so exhausted? How do I talk to my kids about everything that's happened? I mean, 11-year-old, an 8-year-old, and twin 5-year-olds. Who can help me? There was no one to talk to me. My wife and family had the same questions as I did, and I felt lost. Unfortunately, I was unable to seek the answers to all those questions that came out of that meeting because a few weeks later I began to slowly exhibit some alarming symptoms that progressively worsened over the several months. I started leaning to one side. I had no balance and kept falling. Now, mind you, I was pretty active. I was not expecting that. I had a hard time holding a fork and eating. I never smiled, and I had no emotional reactions. I barely spoke, and I slept all the time. The oncologist thought it was depression, which kind of made sense considering I'd just gone through treatment. Maybe I would be depressed. It wasn't it. I sought therapy, and a therapist thought it was a physical issue. That wasn't it either. My blood test showed nothing alarming. Finally, the proper test was ordered, the MRI on my brain. The lymphoma had reoccurred in my brain. After switching doctors and transferring my care from Troy Beaumont to the University of Michigan with Dr. Junk, a renowned neurologist specializing in lymphoma, I underwent chemo and radiation again. The treatment worked incredibly well. Chemo was very, very intense. I spent a total of 30 days over 6 rounds of treatment. So basically every 3 weeks I went into the hospital for 4 days and I went through this treatment. But after 2 rounds of the treatment of methotrexate, I was already a new person and I could think again and carry on a conversation again. I've been done with radiation now for 4 months and I'm still dealing with the side effects though. Brain radiation is much more difficult, way more difficult than the nose radiation. My thoughts are scattered. I have no short-term memory. I've seen my oncologist for follow-ups, and every time I see him, he asks me if I'm going back to work. I totally respect him. He saved my life, but this is frustrating. I'm not ready to go back to work. I don't know how to even start finding a job when my brain is functioning far less than what it used to. Plus, I have more physical issues this time around. My body is crooked. I walk slowly. I'm tired all the time. And I have a hard time recalling words, just like there. I desperately want to start training for a try again, but I can't get my body to run properly. But I am going to do a try. I'm going to do a try in this fall in Reeds Lake. I will be there. Even if I'm walking, I'm going to do it. I've been getting physical therapy, but that's because I asked a doctor for a prescription. I found a support group, but that was only because I did it on my own. When treatment ends, the doctor is done. Nothing comes after. We need something to come after. A person to steer us in the right direction. A person who can refer support groups and assess the need for physical therapy. A person who could help you start your life again. Cancer changes you in ways that only those who have experienced it can relate to. I appreciate my family so much more. I appreciate my life and my health so much more. Life is no longer about work, work, work. It's about being a husband, a dad, and a son. I want you to know how hard this is, though. but other people have it way worse than I do. There are so many programs out there, but they're not always told. They're not always told about them. I've been fighting for 2 years, and I just joined Gilda's Club a few weeks ago because my wife read about it on the internet. Here and there, I've been handed packets of information, but going through this experience is so overwhelming. So much information is thrown at you, and it's so hard to process, let alone remember it all. Having a person there explain, someone check in with you and now and then and remind us of the important points, leaves a phone number for questions, etc. This is all an important need. Everything is so overwhelming for my wife and I about learning while I was learning about cancer, learning about treatment, coming to terms with it all, going through it all. People did come to us with packets of information that explained some of these things, support-wise, but it was impossible to digest it at that point in time. It was all about today. How do you feel today? What appointments are on the books today? What medications do I take today? Am I going to live to see tomorrow? We weren't ready to think about the future and what happens next. What support might be needed too, etc. This needs to happen at the end of the treatment when the patient and the caregiver are able to take it in properly. I still have many questions that I've been researching answers to. Social Security, disability, insurance. These are all things that you're not even thinking about, and then you have to worry about and go through. I'm still confused by a lot of this, and I was an executive. I was a smart guy. Doctors are all about medication and the treatments, which is their job, and they do a fantastic job at it. I can't explain that enough. The doctors, both my doctors in the Detroit area, I just think the world of. However, the patients need someone else to have the job to follow up with them. So now I have to get used to the life of being different. Some side effects of all of these different treatments are permanent. For example, when they removed the tumor in my nose, it completely destroyed the passageway in my sinuses. I'm left with an empty cave, right here, where drainage is constantly building up, creating enormous masses that I have to blow out my nose every week or so. They're pretty cool. Aren't they, Carrie? Well, Carrie doesn't even want to look at them anymore, so that's okay. I'm constantly using a neti pot and saline to keep it moving along. But twice a month I have the mass that's so large that it affects my entire body in the way I feel. And plus, it's extremely painful to blow this all out of my nose. But that's just the permanent side effect. The rest of the side effects I'm praying are temporary. And simply taking a shower is exhausting. I can't explain to you how exhausting it is. I often miss my son's sports events because I'm just tired. It's the only way to explain it, and it kills me. This exhaustion really affects me at night. At 6 p.m., I have a hard time speaking. If this is good, this is at noon, because if it was at 6, we went up north. I'm a brr, and that's what I would do. So there's nothing. It's just what it is, and it's one of the side effects. I have a hard time speaking. I stutter a lot. I can't remember words. I can't finish the sentences. My body is still leaning to one side, although physical therapy is helping, and it's getting better. I still move slowly, and I can't run or bike. I tried biking last week. It didn't go well. I did swim last week. It went well. So it's all working. It's all working towards the goal of the triathlon in the fall. Steroids caused me to gain about 60 pounds in this go around. Actually, this is a great picture. That is me at the end of radiation one, which, side note, that we didn't know how important radiation one was. But I was down to 140 pounds there. That is at me after radiation two, which I got into Survivor, and I was up to 210 pounds. So I'm still getting used to my body. I'm getting better at that. Starting in February, I felt like I was burning from the inside out. My skin around my neck and my head were on fire. That was a side effect of radiation. Started 2 weeks after radiation ended, and it just actually pretty much completed last week. My entire head was so dry during this process that I literally scaled two layers of skin off my head and my face, and it was a wonderful looking situation. But side note, all those wonderful products that you should be able to use to help with the skin don't work. And oh God, it was hard. And so I was pulled off of all those medications, and I would just let it go, and that's what I did for the last 3 months. Now it's just burning and itchy a little bit, but it's much better. Also, I fear my hearing's been affected, but I haven't had it checked yet. I don't want to deal with that yet. And did I mention I have short-term memory issues? I'm getting used to my new normal. Now, challenges to manage all this in my life and finding a job. My oncologist is in the process of connecting me with a person who can assess my abilities and a recommendation on a job that suits me. I desperately want to return to my career of being a retail executive. That's what I loved. But I have to come to terms with the fact that I'm not ready or able. My other major goal is to do that sprint triathlon again. I'm working on this with my physical therapist, but it's a long process, and I'm not there yet. My biggest goal now, however, is to get through one day without feeling so mind-blowingly exhausted. The people who have supported me throughout all of this are my amazing friends and family. My doctors and my old co-workers, and my puppy, Ace, which some of you have gotten to meet. He's awesome. What is missing for me is that one person who I have been referring to throughout this speech. I think the STAR program could offer that one person or that group of people, and I'm glad for the future cancer patients who will get help with this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Rob's family and friends that joined him today. We're lucky. Okay, next I'd like to introduce to you Nancy Mason.